My wife's gym addiction is ruining our marriage. She's having an affair with my boss. The alarm buzzed at 5 a.m., its shrill tone slicing through the stillness of the early morning. I reached out to silence it, but her side of the bed was already cold. She was gone, again. I stumbled into the kitchen, eyes half closed, the faint scent of her floral shampoo lingering in the air. A note was stuck to the fridge. Off to the gym. Don't wait up. Vanessa. This had become the norm. Vanessa was at the gym more than she was at home. 3 hours before work, 2 hours after. Weekends were no different. I used to admire her dedication, her discipline, but now it felt like she was avoiding me, avoiding us. As I sipped my coffee, my phone vibrated. A text from Mark, my boss. Need you in early today. Big meeting prep. Mark and I used to be friends. We golfed on weekends, grabbed drinks after work, but lately his demeanor had changed. Cool, distant. I chalked it up to stress. The company was expanding, and his responsibilities had doubled. At least, that's what I told myself. I arrived at the office to find Mark already there, pacing his glass-walled office, phone pressed to his ear. He caught my eye and gave me a nod, his mouth curving into a half-smile. It felt smug. Hours passed in a blur of presentations and spreadsheets. It wasn't until I heard her name that my world started to crack. Vanessa? Mark's assistant, Chloe, was whispering outside his office. They're getting bold, meeting at the gym every morning. I saw them yesterday laughing, touching. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. Chloe's voice dropped to a murmur, but I could still hear the accusation. It's like they don't even care who sees. I stumbled back, knocking, into the water cooler. Water splashed over my shoes, cold and jarring. Chloe looked up, eyes wide with guilt, before rushing away. I forced myself to breathe, to think. Vanessa and Mark? No. It couldn't be. But the pieces began to fall into place. The early mornings, the late nights, her constant distraction. The gym wasn't just an obsession. It was an escape. That evening I pretended to work late. I watched Mark leave the office, his expensive suit crisp, hair perfectly styled. I followed at a distance, my heart pounding, adrenaline coursing through my veins. He pulled into the gym parking lot, the one Vanessa always went to. I waited, eyes glued to the entrance. 15 minutes later, she arrived. They greeted each other with smiles that were far too familiar, too intimate. She playfully swatted his arm and he pulled her in, his hand lingering on her waist, his lips brushing her cheek. The truth was a knife, sharp and merciless. I drove home, my mind racing. Every shared glance between them replayed in my head. Every late night at the office, every time she came home smelling like his cologne, and I was too blind to notice. I confronted her that night. She denied it at first, her eyes wide with shock. But when I mentioned the gym, the touch, the smile, her defenses crumbled. She sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders hunched, head bowed. It just happened, she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't mean for it to go this far. The next day at work was torture. Mark acted as if nothing was wrong, barking orders and flashing that same smug smile. I wanted to punch him, to wipe that look off his face. But I couldn't afford to lose my job, not now. I began to investigate, piecing together their lies, their stolen moments. Bank statements showed charges for expensive dinners at places I'd never been, gifts I never received. My own wife's, secrets laid bare by cold, hard receipts. But the more I dug, the darker it got. Mark wasn't just seeing Vanessa. He was manipulating her, using his power and wealth to control her. I found messages on her phone, veiled threats disguised as sweet nothings. She was trapped, and she didn't know how to escape. I confronted. Mark in his office, The glass walls a cruel reminder of his transparency, his deceit. He laughed, a low, mocking sound that made my skin crawl. "You were always so easy to fool," he sneered, leaning back in his chair. "She came to me. She wanted more than you could ever give her." I lunged at him, fists flying, rage blinding me. Security dragged me out, and I knew I was finished. Jobless, humiliated, broken. I expected Vanessa to leave, to run to him. But she stayed. She was waiting when I got home, eyes swollen from crying. He said he'd ruin you if I didn't stay quiet," she confessed, voice trembling. "I thought I was protecting you. Protecting us." The truth shattered me. She'd betrayed me, yes, but Mark had manipulated her, exploited her fears. We were both his victims. Together, we plotted his downfall. I gathered evidence, emails, bank statements, proof of his coercion. Vanessa agreed to testify, to expose his lies. The day Mark was escorted out of the office in handcuffs was bittersweet. Justice was served, but the damage was done. Months passed. Life moved forward in a strange, hollow way. The house was quieter, emptier without Vanessa. Her laughter, once the melody of my evenings, was just an echo now, a memory that haunted the walls. I threw myself into rebuilding. I found a new job, less pay, but a clean slate. I avoided the places we used to go together, the restaurants where we'd shared meals, the park where we once dreamed of starting a family. It was easier that way, less painful. Vanessa reached out occasionally, text messages mostly. Short, careful words. "I hope you're doing okay." I never responded. I didn't know how. One evening, I found myself outside the gym. Her gym. I don't know why I went there, maybe to face my ghosts. The parking lot was packed, neon lights buzzing above. I watched people come and go, carefree, unaware of the heartbreak this place had caused. I was about to leave when I saw her, Vanessa, walking out alone. She looked different, thinner, her shoulders slumped as if the weight of her choices bore down on her. She paused, looking around as if searching for something or someone. Her eyes settled on my car. She froze. There was no point in hiding. I stepped out and she flinched, guilt washing over her face. But then her shoulders relaxed, her eyes softening. "Hey." Her voice was fragile, uncertain. "Hey." I stuffed my hands in my pockets, unsure of what to say. I didn't think. "I'd see you here," she murmured, glancing back at the gym. "I quit coming for a while. Couldn't stand the memories." The bitterness in her voice surprised me. She was haunted too. I had to see it, I admitted, to understand. We stood there, awkward and silent. There was so much to say, but the words were tangled, heavy. Finally, she broke the silence. "I'm sorry for everything." Her voice cracked, tears glistening in her eyes. "I know I ruined us." I looked away, pain twisting in my chest. "You did." It was the truth, raw and cold. But it wasn't the whole truth. "You were his victim too," I whispered, the words tasting bitter. "I should have seen it. How he manipulated you." She flinched, guilt flashing across her face. "I let him. I was weak." We stood in the cold, the world moving around us, oblivious to our brokenness. Finally, she asked, "Do you think we'll ever be okay again?" I didn't know, but I wanted to. Maybe someday. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. We parted without another word. I watched her drive away, headlights disappearing into the night. My heart was heavy, but lighter than before. The anger was fading, leaving behind only sorrow. A few. Days later, I received a call from an unknown number. A lawyer's voice greeted me, cool and professional. I represent Mark Harrison. He's willing to settle if you agree to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I felt a surge of satisfaction. Mark was scared. His empire was crumbling, his name dragged through the mud by his own arrogance. I agreed to the meeting, but not for the money. I needed closure. In the sterile conference room, Mark sat across from me, his suit immaculate, his face drawn and pale. He looked smaller, weaker. His eyes met mine, hollow and desperate. He cleared his throat. I never meant for things to go this far. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You destroyed my marriage, manipulated Vanessa, lied to me for months. And you never meant for it to go this far? His jaw tightened, shame flickering in his eyes. I lost everything. My job, my reputation, my family. My wife left me, took the kids. His voice, cracked, vulnerability leaking through. For a moment I felt pity, but then I remembered his smug smile, his threats, the way he broke us just because he could. The pity evaporated. Good, I said, my voice cold. You deserve it. He swallowed, his hands trembling as he slid the settlement papers across the table. This will make you whole again. We can both move on. I looked at the figure, a generous sum, enough to start over. But no amount of money could fix what he'd broken. I signed it anyway. Not for him, not for the money, but for me. To close this chapter. As I walked out of the building, the weight on my shoulders lifted. It was over. Mark was nothing but a ghost now. His power gone. His life shattered by his own greed. A week later, Vanessa showed up at my door. She looked lost, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. I heard about Mark, she said softly. I wanted to thank you for standing up to him, for helping me see the truth. I let her in. We talked. Really talked for the first time in months. She told me about the manipulation, how Mark preyed on her insecurities, how she felt trapped, powerless. I listened, my anger softening into understanding. We were both broken, both scarred, but we weren't enemies. When she left that night, I knew we were finally free. I didn't know what the future held. If we'd find our way back to each other, or if this was truly the end. But I was ready to face it, whatever it was. The gym was just a place. Months passed, and the world kept turning. I learned to live with the emptiness, the echoes of laughter that once filled the house. I poured my energy into rebuilding my life, brick by brick. I took up running. Not at a gym, never at a gym, but on the open road where there were no memories, no ghosts chasing me. I ran to clear my head, to feel the rhythm of my feet pounding against the pavement, to remind myself that I was still moving forward. Vanessa and I kept in touch, carefully, cautiously. We spoke like old friends who shared too much history to sever ties completely. I learned about her struggles, her regrets, her attempts at healing. She was going to therapy, trying to understand the choices she made, the reasons she fell for Mark's manipulation. I lost myself, she admitted one night, her voice raw over the phone. I didn't know who I was anymore. Mark, he made me feel important, needed, and I let him. I let him because I was too scared to face my own emptiness. I didn't know how to respond. What was there to say? That I forgave her? That I was still angry? That I missed her? All of it was true, but none of it was enough. So I listened. I listened as she poured out her heart, as she unraveled the tangled mess of emotions that led her to betray me. It was painful, but it was necessary. Somewhere along the way, I stopped hating her. I couldn't pinpoint the moment. It was gradual, like the way sunlight fades at dusk. I realized that my anger was just another chain binding me to the past, and I was ready to break free. Then, one evening I saw her, Not in person, but online. A photo on social media. Vanessa, smiling, surrounded by friends. She looked happy, peaceful. The sight stung, but it also brought relief. She was healing. We both were. I scrolled past the photo, my heart heavy but calm. It was time to let go. I started dating again. Nothing serious, just casual dinners, light conversations. I wasn't ready for more, but it was good to feel alive, to reconnect with the world outside my pain. One night, I met someone, Emma. She was vibrant, sharp-witted, with a laugh that could light up a room. We clicked instantly, our conversations flowing effortlessly. She was everything Vanessa wasn't. Spontaneous, adventurous, unburdened by the past. I didn't fall in love, not right away, but I started to feel something, a spark I thought I'd lost forever. Vanessa found out. I don't know how, maybe through mutual friends. She called me, her voice trembling. "I'm happy for you," she said. But I could hear the hurt behind her words. It was strange, this guilt that crept in. I owed her nothing, and yet I felt like I was betraying her all over again. We met for coffee, the first time we'd seen each other since the divorce. She looked different, stronger, more confident. She smiled, but it was a bittersweet smile, one laced with memories. "I don't want you to feel guilty," she said, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "You deserve to move on. I want you to be happy." "I want the same for you," I replied, and I meant it. She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I know." There was a pause, a moment heavy with unspoken words. "I loved you, you know. I still do, in some way." My heart ached, but I didn't let it show. I loved you too. It was the truth, and it was enough. We parted as friends, maybe for the last time. There was no going back, no second chances, but there was peace. Emma and I continued to see each other. It was light, easy, no expectations. She knew about my past, about Vanessa, about the scars that still lingered. She didn't push, didn't demand more than I could give, and I was grateful. One night, as we watched the sunset from her balcony, Emma turned to me, her eyes searching mine. "Do you think you'll ever be ready to love again?" I looked at the horizon, the sky ablaze with hues of orange and pink. I thought about Vanessa, about betrayal, about forgiveness, about the man I was before everything fell apart, and the man I was becoming. "Maybe," I whispered, my voice steady. "Someday." Emma smiled, a soft, understanding smile. "Then that's enough." It was a beginning, not just with Emma, but with myself. A new chapter, a chance to rebuild. Not just my life, but my heart. I didn't know where it would lead or if I'd ever fully heal, but I was willing to try, to keep moving forward, one step at a time. And for the first time, in a long while, I felt hope. Months turned into a year, and life continued its unpredictable dance. Emma and I grew closer, our bond deepening with each shared laugh, each quiet moment of vulnerability. Yet, I never rushed it. I was careful, cautious, aware of the shadows that still lingered from my past with Vanessa. Vanessa and I spoke less frequently, our lives drifting apart like leaves on a stream. She was dating someone new, a man named Greg. From what little I heard, he was good to her, steady and supportive. It stung, but I wanted her to be happy. I wanted us both to find peace. Then one evening out of the blue, I got a call. It was Mark, my former boss, the man who shattered my marriage, who I swore I'd never forgive. "What do you want?" My voice was cold, distant. I owed him nothing. "I need to see you," he said, his tone devoid of the confidence that once defined him. Please, it's important. Every fiber of my being screamed to hang up, to never give him the satisfaction of a conversation, but something in his voice stopped me. Desperation, regret, fear. We met at a small cafe, one far from the office. We once shared, far from the memories of betrayal. Mark looked different, older, weary, his shoulders slumped. He was a shadow of the man who once commanded respect and authority. "I've lost everything," he began, his hands trembling around his coffee cup. "My job, my reputation, my marriage. It's all gone." I stared at him, feeling nothing. No sympathy, no anger, just nothing. "And what does that have to do with me?" He looked up, his eyes hollow. "I need you to know. I never meant to hurt you. I was selfish. I thought I could have it all, power, success, Vanessa, but I lost everything instead." He took a shaky breath. "She was the last thing I had, and she left me too." My chest tightened. Vanessa had ended it. I didn't know why that mattered to me, but it did. "I was wrong," Mark continued, his voice cracking. "I ruined your marriage, your life, and mine. I deserve everything that's happened to me. But I needed to say I'm sorry." I watched him. This man who once seemed invincible, now broken and lost. I thought about the pain he caused, the nights I spent alone, the heartache that nearly destroyed me. "I don't forgive you," I said, my voice steady. "But I'm not going to let your mistakes control my life anymore." Mark looked down, his shoulders sagging. "I understand." I stood up, ready to walk away. But then I paused. "If you really mean it, if you really want to make things right, then don't ever contact Vanessa again. Let her move on. Let us both move on." He nodded, his eyes red. "I will. I promise." I left him there, alone, in that cafe, a man who lost everything because he couldn't see beyond his own desires. And for the first time since it all began, I felt free. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. The scars remained, faint reminders of the pain I endured, but they no longer controlled me. They were just part of my story, a story that was still unfolding. Emma stood by my side, patient and understanding. We took our time, building something real, something honest. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Vanessa moved on too. We were no longer friends, no longer enemies, just two people who once loved each other and lost their way. I wished her well, from a distance. One evening, as Emma and I watched the sunset, she took my hand, her fingers intertwining with mine. "Do you ever think about the past?" she asked softly. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But it doesn't hurt the way it used to." She smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder. "Good, because I'm more interested in our future." So was I. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of gold and pink, I realized that my story wasn't about betrayal or loss. It was about healing, about finding strength in the broken places, about letting go. It was about love, rediscovered, redefined, and reborn. I squeezed Emma's hand, feeling the warmth of her touch, the promise of tomorrow. For the first time, in a long while, I was truly happy, and that was enough. The end. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Emma and I grew closer, our relationship blossoming into something beautiful and genuine. We traveled together, shared dreams, and built memories untainted by the shadows of the past. Yet, life has a way of testing even the strongest of foundations. It started with a phone call, a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello?" Silence. Then a familiar voice, hesitant, fragile. "It's Vanessa." I Felt my chest tighten, memories flooding back. It had been months since we last spoke. I thought we were done, that we'd both moved on. What's going on? I kept my voice neutral, guarded. I need your help. She hesitated, her voice breaking. It's Mark. He's not okay. Mark. The man who shattered my marriage. The man who begged for my forgiveness, then faded from my life. I thought I was done with him, that his story no longer intersected with mine. What happened? I asked, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. He's in the hospital. An overdose. They said he might not make it. Her voice trembled, raw with pain. He has no one else. No family, no friends. I didn't know who else to call. My mind spun, a whirlwind of anger and confusion. Why was she calling me? Why did she think I'd care? But beneath the anger there was something else. A flicker of guilt, of unfinished business. Why me, Vanessa? I asked, my voice cold. Why not Greg? Your new boyfriend? She was silent for a moment, then whispered, We broke up. It didn't work out. I closed my eyes, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. Of course, because nothing about Vanessa was ever simple, because her chaos always had a way of spilling into my life. But I couldn't ignore her pain. Not after. Everything we went through, not when she sounded so broken. I'll be there, I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. I hung up and turned to find Emma standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. She'd heard everything. Are you okay? She asked, softly. I hesitated, then nodded. I have to go. I understand. She walked over and hugged me, her warmth grounding me. Just be careful. Don't let her pull you back in. I promised her I wouldn't. But as I drove to the hospital, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping back into a nightmare I thought I'd escaped. I found Vanessa in the waiting room, her face pale, eyes red and swollen. She looked fragile, haunted. A ghost of the woman I once loved, she stood when she saw me, her body trembling. Thank you for coming. I nodded, my jaw clenched. I'm not here for you. I'm here to close this chapter for good. She looked away, shame coloring her cheeks. I understand. We sat in silence, the weight of the past heavy between us. Then finally she spoke. Mark never recovered after everything. He lost his job, his reputation, his identity. He started drinking, then pills. It got worse and worse, and then he called me, said he couldn't do it anymore. My stomach turned. I hated Mark for what he did to me, but I wouldn't wish this on anyone. Not even him. Why didn't you just leave him to his misery? I asked, my voice sharp. Vanessa looked at me, her eyes hollow. Because I couldn't. I was part of his downfall. I was the one who encouraged him, who fed his ego, who made him feel invincible. And when everything fell apart, I was the only one left. There it was, the guilt, the burden she'd been carrying, the same burden that once crushed me. I sighed, leaning back in the chair. Is he going to make it? She shook her head. They don't know. It's touch and go. Her voice broke. I don't even know why I care. After everything he did? Why do I still care? I didn't have an answer, but I understood. You don't just stop caring, no matter how much someone hurts you. We sat in silence, waiting for news that could change everything or nothing at all. And in that silence, I felt the last threads of anger unravel. I forgave her, not for her, but for me, because it was time to move on. An hour later, a doctor approached, us, his face grim. He's stable. But it was close. Another hour and, well, he's lucky to be alive. Vanessa broke down, sobbing into her hands. I stood there, unsure of what to do. I wanted to comfort her, to hold her the way I used to. But that wasn't my place anymore. I turned to leave, but she grabbed my arm. "Thank you for being here, for helping me." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman I once loved, the woman who lost herself in someone else's lies. "Take care of yourself, Vanessa," I said, my voice soft but firm. "Don't lose yourself again." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I won't. I promise." I walked out of that hospital, out of that chapter of my life, feeling lighter than I had in years. I drove home to Emma, to the woman who healed my broken heart. She was waiting for me, worry etched on her face. I pulled her into my arms, holding her close. Life moved on, and for a while, everything seemed perfect. Emma and I grew closer with each passing day, building a future filled with hope and laughter. We moved into a new home, a place that was truly ours, untainted by past ghosts. I poured myself into my work, climbing the ladder at the firm with Emma's unwavering support. She was my rock, my reason to keep pushing forward. But life has a way of testing even the strongest bonds. It began innocently enough, a message from Vanessa. A simple thank you for being there at the hospital, for helping her through one of the darkest moments of her life. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I had closed that chapter. Or so I thought. The messages continued. First sporadic, then more frequent. Apologies, regrets, memories of happier times. She never asked for anything, never crossed any lines. But her presence lingered like a shadow. I told Emma about the messages, wanting to be transparent, to avoid any secrets between us. She trusted me, smiled, and said, "You did the right thing by helping her, but don't let her back in, not again." I promised her I wouldn't. But promises are fragile things. It was a rainy Thursday when everything shattered. I was working late, caught up in a mountain of paperwork, when my phone buzzed. Another message from Vanessa. I almost ignored it. But curiosity got the better of me. "I miss you. I know it's wrong, but I can't help it. We had so many good years together. I never stopped loving you." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. This was a line crossed, a door I never intended to reopen. Before I could respond, another message appeared. "I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. Please forget it." I deleted the messages, my hands trembling. I should have blocked her, cut her out completely, but I didn't. I told myself it was harmless, that she was just lost, clinging to memories because she was lonely. It didn't mean anything, but I didn't tell Emma, and that was my first mistake. The messages continued, growing more emotional, more desperate. She confessed that she was in therapy, trying to rebuild her life, that she regretted everything, hurting me, ruining our marriage, betraying my trust. I didn't respond. But I read every word. I thought I was strong enough to handle it, to keep that boundary firm. But Vanessa always knew how to get under my skin. She knew my weaknesses, my vulnerabilities. It wasn't until I came home one evening to find Emma waiting for me, her face pale, eyes red from crying, that I realized how wrong I was. She was holding my phone, the screen glowing with the latest. "Message from Vanessa. I still love you. I'll always love you." I felt the ground collapse beneath me. "Emma, I reached for her, but she stepped back, hurt and betrayal etched on her face. "How long?" she asked, her voice shaking. "How long have you been talking to her?" I never replied. "I didn't want to hurt you." Her laughter was bitter, hollow. "And yet here we are." I tried to explain, to make her understand that I never wanted any of this, that I thought I was protecting her. But she couldn't hear me through her pain. You lied to me, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. You said you were done with her. You promised me. I had no defense, because she was right. I had broken my promise. She walked out that night, her suitcase clutched tightly in her hand. I stood on the porch, watching her drive away, feeling the world crumble around me. I tried calling her, texting her, begging her to come home. But she needed space, time to process the betrayal she never saw coming. I thought I was stronger, wiser. I thought I'd learned from the past. But Vanessa's shadow had followed me, weaving its way into my new life, poisoning everything I'd worked so hard to rebuild. I sat alone in the house that was supposed to be our fresh start, surrounded by memories that were now tainted by my own mistakes. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Because the truth was clear. I hadn't truly let go of Vanessa. And until I did, I would never have a future with Emma. I picked up my phone and did what I should have done months ago. I blocked Vanessa's number, deleted every message, every trace of her existence. Then I deleted her from my social media, erased every connection, every reminder of what we once had. It was painful, like tearing out a piece of my heart. But it was necessary, for Emma, for me, for the life we were meant to have. I just hoped it wasn't too late. The end, for now. Days turned into weeks and the silence was deafening. Emma didn't return my calls or respond to my messages. She needed space, and I had no choice but to respect that, even as it tore me apart. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the emptiness that filled our home. But every corner held memories of her, her laughter echoing in the hallway, the scent of her perfume lingering in our bedroom. One evening I found myself standing outside her parents' house. Her car was parked in the driveway, a silent reminder of how close she was and yet so far out of reach. I wanted to knock on the door, to beg for another chance, but I knew it wasn't the time. Not yet. I had to fix myself before I could hope to fix us. I started seeing a therapist, confronting the shadows that Vanessa had left behind. I realized that my guilt, my sense of responsibility for her pain, had kept me chained to the past. I had let her words manipulate me, reopen wounds that should have healed long ago. I wrote Emma letters I never sent. I poured my heart out on paper, admitting my mistakes, my fears, my regrets. I told her how much she meant to me, how I couldn't imagine a future without her. I wrote about the therapy sessions, the painful truths I was learning about myself. But no matter how many words I wrote, they all boiled down to one thing. I was still in love with her, and I would do whatever it took to win her back. 3 months passed before I finally heard from her. A text message, short and to the point. Can we talk? My heart raced as I read and reread those words. I didn't waste any time. I replied immediately, agreeing to meet at her parents' house the following evening. When I arrived, she was waiting on the porch, her arms wrapped around herself as the autumn wind rustled the leaves. Her face was guarded, her eyes weary. But she was still the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. "Hi," I said softly, resisting the urge to reach out and hold her. "Hi." Her voice was distant, cautious. We sat on the porch steps, the silence stretching between us. I didn't know where to start, but she spoke first. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why did you keep her messages? A secret?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "I thought I was protecting you. I didn't want to hurt you or make you doubt us. I thought if I ignored her, she'd eventually stop." Her eyes were filled with pain. "But by hiding it, you did hurt me. You broke my trust." "I know," I admitted, my voice breaking. "And I'm sorry. I should have been honest from the start. I should have trusted you to understand." She looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting together. Did you still have feelings for her?" "No." The answer came out instantly, without hesitation. I didn't reply because I didn't feel anything for her, not anymore. But I was stupid. I thought I owed her something because of how things ended. I let my guilt get in the way, and I didn't realize how much it was hurting you. She was silent for a moment, her shoulders tense. Do you still love me? I felt my chest tighten, my throat closing up. Yes. More than anything. You're the only one I want, Emma. I never stopped loving you. Her eyes finally met mine, a glimmer of hope flickering beneath the pain. Then why did you let her come between us? Because I was weak, I confessed, my voice shaking. I let my past control me. I let her words get into my head, and I was too stubborn to admit it. But I'm done with that. I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I let it happen. I've cut all ties with her. She's not a part of my life anymore, and she never will be again. Emma's expression softened, a tear slipping down her cheek. You should have told me sooner. I know, and I'm sorry. I hate that I hurt you, that I made you feel like you couldn't trust me. I hate myself for it every day. Her hand trembled as she wiped her tears away. I love you, Ryan, but I don't know if I can trust you again. Her words were a punch to the gut, but I understood. Trust once broken isn't easily mended. I'll do whatever it takes, I promised, my voice raw with emotion. I'll fight for us. I'll earn your trust back, no matter how long it takes. She looked away, her gaze distant. I need time. I need to figure out if I can forgive you, if we can rebuild what we had. I'll wait, I said without hesitation. As long as it takes. I'm not giving up on us. She stood up, her arms wrapped around herself again. I think we need some space to figure out who we are, separately. Maybe then we can find our way back to each other. It wasn't the reconciliation I'd hoped for, but it was a start. It was a chance. I understand, I whispered, fighting back the tears. I'll wait for you, Emma, no matter what. She hesitated, her eyes lingering on me for a moment longer. Then she turned and walked back into her parents' house, leaving me alone on the porch. I sat there for a long time. Weeks passed and the days blurred together as I tried to adjust to life without Emma. I respected her need for space, no matter how much it hurt. I buried myself in work, but even that was complicated. Seeing Marcus every day was a constant reminder of the pain I'd caused. We were civil, professional even, but the camaraderie we once shared was gone. An icy tension filled the air whenever we were in the same room. I couldn't blame him. I had hurt his sister, betrayed his trust. I didn't expect his forgiveness, but I still hoped for it. One Friday evening, as I was preparing to leave the office, Marcus walked into my office, his expression unreadable. Got a minute? He asked, his voice flat. Of course, I replied, bracing myself for whatever was coming. He closed the door behind him and leaned against the wall, arms crossed. I spoke to Emma today. My heart skipped a beat. How is she? He hesitated, his eyes narrowing. She's hurting, confused, but she's okay, I guess. I nodded, relief flooding through me. I'm glad she has you. I'm glad she's not alone. Marcus's jaw tightened. She told me about your therapy sessions, about everything you've been dealing with. I looked down, ashamed. I didn't want to drag you into this. It's my mess to clean up. That's the thing, Ryan. You didn't just hurt her. You hurt me too. His voice cracked, and for the first time I saw the pain beneath his anger. You were my best friend. I trusted you. I vouched for you. And you made a fool out of me. I know, I whispered, guilt washing over me. I'm sorry, Marcus. I can't undo what I did, but I'm trying to make it right. I'm trying to be better. He stared at me for a long moment, his shoulders sagging. I want to believe you, but it's going to take time. A lot of time. I understand, and I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust, both of yours. He let out a heavy sigh, rubbing his face. Emma still loves you, you know. She's just scared. She doesn't want to get hurt again. Hearing those words felt like a punch to the gut. I won't hurt her again. I swear it. Marcus's eyes hardened. Don't make promises you can't keep. Just be honest with her. That's all. She wants? I will. No more lies. No more secrets. He nodded, his stance softening. I'm not ready to forgive you. Not yet. But I don't hate you. Not completely, at least. A faint smile crossed my lips. I'll take it. It's more than I deserve. He shook his head, his expression conflicted. You were like a brother to me, Ryan. I don't know if we can ever go back to that. But maybe one day we can be friends again. My chest tightened, hope flickering to life. I'd like that. Marcus turned to leave but paused at the door. Take care of yourself. Don't mess this up. Again. I won't, I promised. I won't lose her again. He gave a curt nod before walking out, leaving me alone in the office. I stood there for a while, the weight of his words sinking in. I knew it wouldn't be easy. I knew I had a long road ahead of me. But for the first time in months, I felt like I was moving forward. I was rebuilding the bridges I had burned, one step at a time, and I was determined to win back the woman I loved, no matter how long it took. I spent the next few weeks reflecting on everything. My mistakes, my lies, the pain I'd caused. Therapy was helping, but it was a slow process. Each session peeled back another layer, forcing me to confront the insecurities and fears that had led me down this path. But no matter how much progress I made, it didn't change the fact that I was alone. Emma hadn't reached out, and I respected her need for space, even though it killed me. Then, one Saturday morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Can we talk? I think I'm ready. My heart raced as I typed out a reply, my fingers trembling. Of course. Whenever you're ready. She suggested we meet at her favorite park, the one where we used to take long walks on lazy Sunday afternoons. The nostalgia hit me hard, a bittersweet reminder of what we'd lost and what I was desperately hoping to rebuild. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting on a bench beneath the large oak tree where we'd carved our initials years ago. She looked beautiful, as always, but there was a guardedness in her posture, a wariness in her eyes. I approached slowly, my heart in my throat. Hey, she looked up, her expression softening just a little. Hi. I sat down, leaving a respectful distance between us. Silence hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. After a moment, she broke the tension. How have you been? I let out a shaky breath. I've been better. Therapy's helping, but it's hard. I miss you. Every day. Her gaze fell to her hands, fingers twisting nervously. I miss you too. But I'm still so angry and hurt. I know, I whispered. You have every right to be. I betrayed you. I lied to you, and I hate myself for it. Her eyes glistened with tears, but she quickly blinked them away. Why didn't you just talk to me? Why? Did you push me away? I swallowed the lump in my throat. I was ashamed. I was struggling. And instead of leaning on you, I hid it. I convinced myself that you wouldn't understand, that you'd see me as weak. She looked at me, pain etched into every line of her face. I was your wife, Ryan. I vowed to stand by you, no matter what. But you didn't give me a chance. I know. I failed you. I failed us. And I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to make it right. I want to be the man you deserve. She let out a bitter laugh. You know, part of me wants to hate you. It would be easier if I could just hate you, but I can't. Because I still love you, even after everything. My chest tightened, hope flickering to life. Emma, I love you too. More than anything. And I swear to you, I'll never hurt you again. She looked away, tears slipping down her cheeks. I don't know if I can believe that. I don't know if I can trust you again. My heart sank. I understand. And I won't rush you. I'll wait as long as it takes. Silence fell between us, broken only by the rustling of leaves in the wind. She wiped her tears and stood up, her shoulders tense. I need more time, she whispered. I need to figure out if I can move past this. I stood up as well, my voice trembling. Take all the time you need. I'll be here waiting, no matter how long it takes. She looked at me, a mixture of pain and longing in her eyes. Goodbye, Ryan. Goodbye, Emma. I watched as she walked away, her figure growing smaller and smaller until she disappeared from view. I stood there for a long time, the autumn breeze swirling around me, carrying with it the faint scent of her perfume. It wasn't the resolution I'd hoped for, but it was a step forward, a chance at redemption, and for now, that was enough. Days turned into weeks, and the hollow ache of Emma's absence never left me. But I respected her decision. She needed time, and I was determined to give it to her, even if it meant facing my own loneliness head-on. Therapy became my anchor, a place to untangle the mess inside my head. Each session peeled back more layers, forcing me to confront the insecurities and fears that had driven my actions. I learned to stop hiding from my emotions, to face them, understand them. It was painful, but it was necessary. Work was another matter entirely. The tension between Marcus and me remained, a constant reminder of the damage I'd done. We were civil, professional, but the easy camaraderie we once shared was gone. And every time I caught a glimpse of his guarded expression, it was another knife to the heart. Then, one Friday evening, just as I was about to leave the office, Marcus appeared at my door. He looked exhausted, his shoulders sagging under a weight. I couldn't see. Got a minute? He asked, his voice devoid of its usual edge. Yeah, of course, I replied, trying to keep the surprise out of my voice. He stepped into the office and closed the door behind him, leaning against the wall, with a sigh. Emma came to see me last night. My heart skipped a beat. Is she okay? She's coping, he said, his gaze distant. She's still hurt, still confused. But she's trying to move forward. I nodded, relief flooding through me. I'm glad she has you. I'm glad she's not alone. Marcus's eyes flicked to me, his jaw tightening. She told me she's thinking about giving you another chance. My breath caught in my throat. She is? He crossed his arms, his expression hardening. Yeah, but she's terrified, Ryan. She's scared you'll hurt her again, that you'll lie to her again. I won't, I said, my voice firm. I've changed. I'm still changing. I'm not the same person who lied to her. He scoffed, his eyes narrowing. You don't just change overnight. It takes time, effort, and trust is a hell of a lot harder to rebuild than it is to break. I know, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I won't hurt her again, Marcus. I swear it. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze searching. I want to believe you, but if you break her heart again, if you lie to her again, I won't forgive you, not this time, I understand, and I won't give you a reason to. He looked away, his shoulders sagging. She loves you, Ryan. That's the only reason she's even considering this. But if you want her back, you need to be honest with her. Completely honest. No more secrets. I promise. No more secrets. He nodded slowly, his jaw clenching. Good, because if you hurt her again, I won't just be your boss. I'll be the guy who breaks your nose. A wry smile crossed my lips. Fair enough. I deserve it. He let out, a heavy sigh, running a hand through his hair. I hate this, you know. I hate that it's come to this. You were my best friend, my brother. And now, I don't even know who you are anymore. I'm trying to find that out myself, I admitted, my voice low. I'm trying to be better, to be someone worth trusting again. His expression softened, just a little. I hope you do. For her sake, and for yours. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Thank you. For being there for her. For looking out for her when I couldn't. He shook his head, his eyes hardening. Don't thank me. Just don't screw this up again. With that, he turned and walked out of my office, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I stood there for a long time, his words echoing in my mind. Emma was considering giving me another chance. A chance to rebuild what I'd broken. I couldn't afford to waste it. I wouldn't let her down again. The days that followed were filled with a quiet, determined focus. I kept my distance from Emma, respecting her space, but I was constantly trying to better myself. Therapy was a grueling process, but it was making me confront parts of myself I had long ignored. I learned how much of my actions had been driven by insecurity, fear of failure, and an overwhelming need for control. These were things I couldn't change overnight, but I was working on them. Slowly, painfully. Then one afternoon, the phone rang. I saw Emma's name flash on the screen, and for a moment, my heart stopped. I hesitated for only a second before answering. Emma? There was a pause before she spoke, her voice trembling slightly. Can we meet? I need to talk. I felt a mixture of relief and fear. Of course. Where? The cafe near the park. Same place we used to go? She said softly. It was a place filled with memories, both good and bad, but I would go anywhere to talk to her. I'll be there. I arrived early, nerves eating at me as I sat at a table in the corner, my fingers tapping on the edge of my coffee cup. My mind raced with 100 possibilities of what she might say, what might happen. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her at first. She was wearing a casual sweater and jeans, but there was something different about the way she carried herself, stronger, more resolute. She spotted me, her gaze locking with mine, and for a brief second, I saw the woman I had fallen in love with. But there was caution in her eyes now. The walls still in place, guarding her heart. She sat down across from me, folding her hands together on the table. There was a heaviness to the silence between us, like both of us were waiting for the other to make the first move. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been thinking a lot. About everything. I know, I said softly. I've been thinking about everything too. I can't tell you how sorry I am, Emma. I hurt you in a way that I'll never be able to undo. But I'm trying, every day, to be better, to fix the things I messed up. She nodded slowly but didn't respond right away. Her fingers tapped against the table, her eyes distant as though weighing my words. I know you're hurting, I continued, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I'm not giving up. I'm not going to walk away from us, from what we have. If you give me a chance, I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that I can be the man you need. She sighed deeply, her gaze falling to her hands. Ryan, I want to believe you. I really do. But trust, it's hard to rebuild once it's been shattered. You told me lies for so long. And then there was him, she said, her voice faltering as she spoke about Marcus. I know. I betrayed your trust in every possible way, I said quietly. But I swear to you I never wanted to hurt you. I was terrified of losing you, terrified that I wasn't good enough, and I tried to control everything. But I see now how wrong I was. And I've learned to be honest, even when it's hard. She met my gaze, her expression softening just a little. But the truth is, I don't know if I can ever forget the way you made me feel. You hid things from me. You shut me out when I needed you the most. Her voice broke slightly, and I could see the hurt in her eyes. "Emma, I was a coward," I said, my throat tight. "But I'm not that man anymore. I want to be the person you can trust again. I'll do anything it takes." She was quiet for a long time, her fingers still trembling as she held onto her cup. I could see the battle in her eyes, wanting to believe me, but holding back the part of her that had been betrayed so deeply. Finally, she spoke again. "I don't know if I can go back to the way things were. Maybe we need to start over, Ryan. Slowly. See if we can rebuild. But it's going to take time. And I need to know that you're really serious about this." "I'm serious," I said, my voice steady with conviction. "I don't want to lose you, Emma. I can't lose you. And I'll prove it day by day that I'm worthy of your trust again." Her lips trembled as she nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know if I'll ever feel the same way again," she whispered, "but I'm willing to try." It felt like a lifeline, fragile. Yes, but still a chance. She wasn't ready to forgive me completely, not yet, but she was open to the possibility of rebuilding, and that was enough for now. I reached across the table, carefully placing my hand over hers. She didn't pull away. "We'll take it one step at a time," I said, my voice quiet. "No pressure. Just us, figuring it out." She gave me a small, uncertain smile. One step at a time. It wasn't perfect, but it was a beginning. And after everything that had happened, a beginning was all I could hope for. As I walked away from the cafe, my heart lighter than it had been in months, I knew that the road ahead would be difficult. The days after that meeting were filled with cautious hope. Emma and I had agreed to take things slowly, to rebuild the trust that had been shattered between us. It wasn't going to be easy, and I knew it. But the mere fact that we were talking, that she was willing to meet me halfway, was more than I could have hoped for just a few weeks ago. We started by reintroducing small gestures into our daily lives. Casual texts throughout the day, asking about how work was going or what we were having for dinner. Small, mundane moments that we had let slip away in the chaos of everything else. It wasn't the passionate connection we once had, but it was a start. One evening, I decided to do something unexpected. I cooked dinner. Emma had always enjoyed it when I took the time to make something special, and even though I was far from a gourmet chef, I wanted to show her that I was trying, that I cared enough to put in the effort. When she walked in the door that evening, the smell of garlic and rosemary filled the apartment, and she stopped, taking in the sight of me standing by the stove. "I made dinner," I said, a little awkwardly, holding up the skillet. Her eyes softened, and for a moment the walls between us seemed to fade just a bit. "You cooked?" I nodded. "I thought it'd be nice if we had a peaceful evening for once. No distractions, just us." She smiled faintly, though there was still a hint of hesitation in her gaze. But it was progress. She sat down at the table, her posture relaxed for the first time in days. We ate in silence at first, the quiet almost comforting, like we were both trying to understand what this new phase of our relationship might look like. Then, as the meal went on, the conversation naturally picked up. "How was work today?" she asked, her tone gentle but genuine. I felt a surge of gratitude for her willingness to ask, to care. It had been a long time since we'd had these kinds of conversations, the simple exchanges that had once formed the foundation of our bond. "Busy, but I'm getting through it. How about you? How's the gym?" Her expression shifted, just a flicker of unease before she answered. "It's fine. I've been thinking a lot about it, actually. Maybe I've been pushing myself too hard." I watched her carefully, wondering if she was still avoiding the deeper issues, the reasons behind her gym obsession. But I didn't. "Push. Not yet. I'm glad you're taking care of yourself." I said, keeping my tone neutral. "But if you ever want to talk about anything, you know I'm here." She nodded, but her eyes didn't meet mine. It was clear she was still, grappling with the weight of the affair, of everything that had happened with Marcus. As the evening wore on, I did my best to keep things light. We talked about old memories, funny things that had happened when we were first dating, and shared a few laughs. It felt nice, but it wasn't the same. I could sense the distance, the emotional gulf that still separated us, and I knew that. It was going to take more than one quiet evening to close it. That night, as we lay in bed, Emma turned away from me, her back to mine, her body stiff. I wanted to reach out, to hold her, but I knew better than to force it. "I know things are still strained," I whispered, my voice barely audible in the darkness. "I know I've hurt you, and I can't undo that. But I'm here, Emma. I'm not going anywhere." She didn't answer right away, and I didn't press her for one. But after a long silence, I felt her shift slightly, just enough for her back to be facing me more directly. "I don't know if I can forgive you completely, Ryan," she said softly. "I don't know if I ever will. But I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see if we can move forward." My heart clenched at the words, but it was the truth. We were both still so broken, so scarred. But the fact that she was willing to try, that was all I needed. "I don't expect forgiveness," I said, my voice steady. "I just want you to know that I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm worth it, that we're worth it." She didn't respond, and I didn't push her. I just lay there in the quiet dark, listening to the sound of her breath, steadying as she drifted to sleep. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt in a few weeks or even months. But for the first time in a long time, I had a glimmer of hope. We weren't fixed. Not yet, but we were trying, and that was more than I had ever thought we'd have again. The days stretched on, each one blending into the next. There were moments of quiet progress, like when Emma asked me to help her with the grocery shopping, or when we shared a cup of coffee in the mornings, slowly regaining a rhythm that felt vaguely familiar. But there were also moments of tension. Silent dinners, awkward pauses in conversation, and the lingering weight of everything unspoken between us. We didn't talk about Marcus, not directly, and certainly not about the affair, though I felt the shadow of it hanging over every interaction. Every time Emma's phone buzzed or when she looked too intently at her texts, my heart skipped a beat, and I had to fight the urge to confront her about it again. I knew I couldn't push her at least not yet. She wasn't ready, but neither was I. I wanted to trust her again, but that trust felt so far out of reach, a distant memory that I was trying to recapture. I was torn between trying to rebuild what we had and wanting to know everything, the whole truth, no matter how painful it might be. One afternoon, as I worked from home, my phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Emma, but this time it was different. There was a sense of urgency in her words. "We need to talk." "I'm sorry." My stomach sank. I had feared this moment. I set my phone down and tried to steady my nerves, but they were already frayed. I didn't want to overreact. I knew she had been struggling with the aftermath of everything, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was something more. Something was off. I gathered myself together, took a deep breath, and left the house to meet her at the park, the place where we had first started trying to mend things. When I arrived, I saw her sitting on a bench, her back hunched, her hands folded in her lap. The sight of her, so small and vulnerable, made my heart ache. She looked up when she heard my footsteps, but there was no smile this time, just a resigned expression, like she had already made up her mind about something. I sat down beside her, careful not to crowd her space, and waited for her to speak. The seconds stretched into minutes, and it felt like time itself had frozen. I've been lying to you," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Not about everything, but about some things. There are parts of this, everything that I haven't told you, and I don't think I can keep hiding it anymore. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My heart raced, my mind spiraling. I thought I had already heard everything. I thought the worst was behind us. "I'm listening," I said, my voice hoarse. Emma hesitated, her eyes darting around as if searching for the right words. "I've been seeing Marcus, but it's not what you think. I wasn't just seeing him because of the gym or to fill some void. I was trying to get my own control back. It was a way to take control of something after everything. You put me through. I never wanted to hurt you, Ryan. But I was angry, and I needed to feel like I was worth something again." Her words stung, but there was a raw honesty in them that I wasn't prepared for. It was painful hearing her admit it, hearing her speak about how she had felt trapped and powerless, how her actions had been a reaction to the chaos we had created together. "I didn't know how to fix things." "I didn't know how to fix me," she continued, her voice shaky now. "I thought if I kept it hidden from you, if I didn't confront it, I could protect both of us. But I've been lying to myself too. I've been lying to you. And I'm so sorry, Ryan, for everything." Her words hung in the air, thick with regret, but they didn't feel like an apology. Not yet. It wasn't just the affair, it was everything that led up to it. The mistrust, the silence, the games we both played. "You don't need to apologize," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "You don't. You've been honest now, and that's all I needed. But we're not okay. Not yet, and maybe not for a long time." Emma nodded slowly, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Ryan. Not right now. I know what I did, and I know it might be too late for us." It wasn't the answer I had hoped for, but it was the one I had feared. I didn't know what I wanted anymore. Did I want to rebuild, or was it too far gone? "I don't know what to say, Emma," I whispered, my voice cracking. "I just don't know." And for the first time since all of this began, I didn't know if we would make it through. The silence between us stretched, thick and suffocating. I could feel Emma's presence next to me, her shoulders slumped in defeat, her eyes still wet with unshed tears. I wanted to reach out, to offer some comfort, but the emotional distance between us felt insurmountable. The weight of the affair, the lies, and the broken trust hung over us like a storm cloud, blocking out any chance of genuine reconciliation. "I can't undo what's been done," she said, her voice barely a whisper now. "I can't take back the hurt I've caused, and I can't make you forget any of it." I nodded, swallowing hard against the lump in my throat. "No, you can't. I can't forget either." Her eyes searched mine, looking for something. An answer, perhaps, or a way forward. But I didn't have one. Not yet. And I wasn't sure I ever would. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Emma," I said finally, the words feeling like lead in my chest. "But I'm willing to try. For us. For what we had. But that's a long road. A very long road." She looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of the bench as if trying to find something solid to hold on to. "I'll do whatever it takes, Ryan. I'll fight for us. But I understand if you don't want me to. If you need to move on, I'll respect that." Her words, the vulnerability in them, cut through me. I didn't want to let go of us, of the person she used to be to me. But I wasn't sure how to find my way back to that place. The emotional wounds were too fresh, too raw, and the shadow of Marcus still lingered between us. "I don't know what I need right now," I admitted, my voice strained. "But I can't keep living in this limbo. I need to figure out what I want, what I can live with." She nodded again, her face pale with the weight of my words. "Take the time you need. I'll be here. I'll wait." The finality of that statement hit me harder than I expected. She wasn't asking for forgiveness now, but she was giving me space, allowing me the room to figure things out on my own terms. It was a gesture of respect, but it also felt like she was already preparing herself for the possibility that I might walk away. "I don't know what's going to happen, Emma," I said, struggling to meet her eyes. "But I'll let you know when I do." She gave a small, sad smile, her eyes brimming with tears once again. "I'll be waiting, whenever you're ready." I stood up slowly, my legs feeling like lead as I made my way back to my car. The weight of the conversation lingered in the air, the uncertainty pressing in on all sides. I didn't know what the future held. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't go back to what we were. I couldn't pretend that everything was fine when it wasn't. As I drove home, the city, lights blurred past, a reflection of the turmoil inside me. My mind raced, replaying every moment, every word. Was there hope for us? Or had we already crossed the point of no return? When I got back to the apartment, I found Emma sitting on the couch, her hands clasped tightly together in her lap. She looked up as I entered, her face a mixture of hope and fear. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything." I sighed, running a hand through my hair, and for a moment I couldn't find the words. I didn't want to hurt her more, but I couldn't lie either. "I need space, Emma," I said quietly, my voice tinged with sadness. "I need to think. I can't pretend everything's okay right now." Her face fell, but she didn't argue. She simply nodded, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I understand. Take all the time you need." As I walked past her and into the bedroom, I felt a pang of guilt. I wasn't ready to let go of everything we had, but I couldn't ignore the fact that things had changed. There was a part of me that still wanted to fight for us, but another part, the part that had been betrayed, wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. I lay down on the bed, the silence in the apartment deafening, and closed my eyes, hoping for clarity, but finding nothing but more questions. The days that followed were filled with tension. Emma stayed quiet, giving me the space I had asked for, but I could feel her watching me, waiting for some sign that I was coming back to her. I, in turn, spent my time analyzing everything, our past, our mistakes, my own feelings, and trying to figure out if there was any way forward. But each time I looked at her, I saw the ghost of Marcus, the lie she had lived, and the betrayal that still stung. We were both trapped in our own pain, unsure if we could move past it. The love that had once seemed so unbreakable now felt fragile, teetering on the edge of collapse. In the end, only time would tell if we could rebuild what we had, or if it was already too late. Days turned into weeks, and the air in our apartment became thick with tension. I tried to move through the motions of daily life, going to work, dealing with the mundane tasks of laundry, cleaning, and grocery shopping, but everything felt like it was happening in a fog. Emma and I barely exchanged more than a few words here and there. The gap between us was a constant reminder of what had been broken, and neither of us seemed to know how to bridge it. I still didn't know what I wanted. The pain of her betrayal was still fresh, and I could feel the cracks in my heart every time I looked at her. She was trying, I could see that, but I wasn't sure if I could forgive her. More than that, I didn't know if I even wanted to. Every time I thought about Marcus, about the affair, the gym, the lies, it filled me with a kind of rage that I didn't know how to release. But then, one evening, everything shifted. I was sitting at the kitchen table, going over some emails from work, when I heard a knock on the door. At first I thought it was nothing, but then it came again, insistent, louder this time. I stood up, walking slowly toward the door, my pulse quickening for reasons I didn't understand. I opened it, and there he was. Marcus. His face was grim, like he was carrying some heavy burden that was weighing him down. I could feel the anger rising in me just from the sight of him, the man who had betrayed me and my marriage, the one who had taken something I thought I could never get back, but he wasn't there to gloat. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice low. "It's about Emma." I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want anything to do with him. But there was something in his eyes, something that told me this wasn't the usual arrogance. There was genuine distress in him. "What the hell do you want?" I growled, stepping back and motioning for him to enter, too curious to send him away. He stepped inside, looking around as if searching for something, and then he faced me. "I'm not here to cause more trouble, Ryan," he said quietly. "I know I've done you wrong. I'm not proud of what happened. But there's something you need to know, something you need to hear, for your own sake." I folded my arms across my chest, suddenly more alert. "What the hell are you talking about?" "I've been watching her. Emma," he said, voice strained. "I've been keeping an eye on her. I didn't mean to, but after what happened, I couldn't help it. I thought—" "You thought what?" I interrupted, my anger flaring. "You thought you'd come here and tell me some story about how— Sorry you are? You think that changes anything?" "No," he said quickly, his eyes darting around nervously. "No, listen to me. It's not like that. It's just, I don't think she's telling you the full truth about why she was doing what she was doing." I froze. My mind raced. "What are you saying? What do you mean?" He looked around again as if checking to make sure no one else was listening. "I've seen her at the gym. It's more than just the workouts, more than just the affair. There's someone else, Ryan, someone who's been pulling the strings, behind all of this." I felt the floor beneath me shift, like the ground had suddenly become unstable. "What the hell are you talking about?" "I don't know exactly who they are, but Emma's been involved in something bigger than just us. I don't know if she's being manipulated or if she's playing a part in something darker, but she's not telling you everything." My heart slammed in my chest. I couldn't breathe. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, of betrayals, of secrets, none of it making sense. "Why are you telling me this now?" I demanded, the edge in my voice sharper than I intended. "Because I don't think she's being honest with you," Marcus said, his tone heavy. "And I don't think she's the only one to blame. I don't know what's going on, but I'm not the one she's really working with." The room spun. "You're not making any sense. Who's she working with, Marcus?" "I don't know, man," Marcus said, rubbing his hands over his face. "But it's not just about her and you. There's more to this story. And I think you need to find out before it all falls apart. Before she drags you into something you can't get out of." He turned to leave, pausing at the door. "I'm not your friend, Ryan. I'm not asking for forgiveness. But I needed you to know." And just like that, he was gone. The door slammed. Behind him, leaving me standing in the middle of the room, my mind reeling. Was Emma involved in something more? Was the affair just the tip of the iceberg? I knew Marcus wasn't the most trustworthy person, but there was something in his eyes, something that felt genuine. And if there was even a shred of truth to what he'd said, I had no choice but to dig deeper. And as I sat back down at the kitchen table, my hands trembling, I realized the storm we were facing was far from over. It was only just beginning. I sat there for a long time, my mind racing. Marcus's words echoed in my head, but they felt like fragments of a puzzle that didn't quite fit together. If Emma was involved in something bigger, something more dangerous, I had to figure out what it was. I couldn't trust her, not fully, not with what Marcus had said, but I couldn't let her slip through my fingers without getting answers. I needed to confront her, to dig deeper, but I wasn't sure how much more of this I could take. The deceit, the uncertainty, it was suffocating. Still, if Marcus was right, if there was something lurking beneath the surface of Emma's actions, then I had to uncover it no matter the cost. The next morning, I found myself standing in the doorway of our bedroom, staring at Emma as she pulled. On her gym clothes, her face devoid of emotion. The usual tension between us seemed even thicker now. I could feel the weight of the secret she was hiding pressing down on me, and I had no choice but to dig into it. "Emma," I said, my voice tight, barely containing the storm brewing inside me. "We need to talk." She froze for a moment, then slowly turned to face me. About what? I could feel the lie hanging in the air, her feigned innocence, but I pushed forward anyway. About everything. About you. About Marcus. About what's been going on. What is it that you're hiding from me? Her eyes flickered, just for a moment before she regained control. "Ryan, I told you everything. What more do you need to know?" I took a step forward, my gaze intense. "No, there's more to it." "I know there is. I spoke to Marcus last night. He told me things you haven't been honest about." The color drained from her face. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but the words seemed to fail her. She looked away, her eyes darting around the room, desperate for an escape. "You shouldn't have spoken to him." "Why not?" I shot back, my frustration rising. "What aren't you telling me, Emma? What's really going on?" She sank down onto the edge of the bed, her hands shaking as she clasped them together in her lap. "I didn't want you to know, Ryan. I didn't want to drag you into this. It's complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated, feeling a sharp pang in my chest. "Emma, the truth is right there, and you're still hiding from it. What do you mean, complicated?" She sighed, her face crumpling under the weight of it all. "I never meant for things to go this far. I never meant to hurt you. But Marcus, he wasn't the only one I was involved with. There's someone else, Ryan. Someone who's been influencing me." My heart stopped. "Who? Who else, Emma?" She hesitated, as if struggling to find the words. Finally, she whispered, "It's my boss, the one I've been spending all this time with at the gym." I didn't know what I was getting into at first, but it became more than just a casual affair. It became a way for me to escape, a way for me to feel powerful when I felt so out of control in everything else, and now I don't know how to stop. The confession hit me like a slap. My mind reeled. Her boss. This whole time. The gym. The hours she spent away from home. Those weren't just innocent excuses. This wasn't just about a gym addiction or an affair. It was about something far deeper. Something I wasn't prepared for. So, all of this was part of a plan? A game you were playing? I asked, my voice trembling with both anger and disbelief. "I didn't plan it," she said, her eyes filled with regret. "It just happened. And then it spiraled out of control, and now I can't see a way out. I thought I could balance everything, but I've been lying to you, to myself." "Who is this person? Your boss?" I demanded, my fists clenched. She looked down, unable to meet my gaze. "His name is Thomas. He's involved in some things that go beyond the gym. There are deals, money. I didn't think it was that important at first, but it's been getting bigger, and now I'm scared. I don't know how deep I'm in, but I'm in too deep." I took a step back, trying to absorb her words. My mind was a blur. But one thing was crystal clear now. Emma's affair wasn't just about her own selfish desires. It was part of something darker, something I had no idea she was involved in. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice thick with pain. "Why keep all of this from me?" "I could have helped you, Emma," her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't want to drag you into this world. It's dangerous. I was trying to protect you, even if it meant lying to you." I let out a bitter laugh. "Protect me? By lying and throwing everything we've built away?" "I know," she whispered, her voice cracking, "and I'm sorry, but I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if I can. And now it's too late." I turned away from her, my mind spinning. Everything I thought I knew about her, about us, was a lie. She was involved in something far more dangerous than I ever imagined. And now I had a choice to make. The weight of her confession hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and heavy, waiting to break. I couldn't just walk away, not without understanding the full scope of this mess. My mind was firing on all cylinders, trying to connect the dots. But it all felt like too much, too fast. The gym, Marcus, her boss, Thomas, each piece felt like a new layer of betrayal that was slowly suffocating me. And yet, despite the rage building inside me, part of me was still tethered to her. I wanted to believe that we could rebuild, but how could I trust her after everything? I couldn't stay in that room any longer, couldn't keep listening to her apologies. I needed air, space to think. Without saying another word, I grabbed my jacket and stormed out, the door slamming behind me. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to escape the suffocating tension in the apartment. I drove for miles, winding through city streets, my mind racing, unable to find any answers. The world around me seemed oblivious to the turmoil consuming my life. People walked by, laughing, chatting, living their lives while mine felt like it was crumbling under the weight of secrets I hadn't been prepared for. I ended up in a park, standing at the edge of a quiet pond, staring at my reflection in the water, trying to make sense of it all. The sound of footsteps broke my reverie. I turned to see a familiar face. It was Marcus. He looked different, tired, worn, like someone who had been carrying a burden for too long. He stopped a few feet away, not daring to get too close. "I knew you'd need time to process everything," he said, his voice softer than before. "But I couldn't just let you be left in the dark. I didn't want to hear from him again. I didn't want anything to do with him, but part of me recognized the need for answers. Maybe he had something I needed to know." "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm not here to cause more problems, Ryan," he said. "But you need to know. Emma's in deeper than you think. And I'm not just talking about her affair with me. This isn't something you can fix with just a conversation or by walking away. It's bigger than that." I narrowed my eyes at him. "What do you mean by bigger? What's going on, Marcus?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Thomas? Emma's boss? He's not just some gym owner. He's involved in some illegal activities, drugs, money laundering. And Emma? She's been roped into it. At first, I thought she was just looking for attention, for a way to escape the problems in our marriage, but now I can see that she's become a pawn in something dangerous." I felt my blood run cold. "What are you saying? Are you telling me that Emma's involved in criminal activity?" "I don't think she knows the full extent of it," Marcus said, his voice low, almost regretful. "But she's in too deep to get out on her own. Thomas has his hooks in her. And if she tries to leave, if she tries to back out, she won't just lose everything. She could be in real danger." I clenched my fists, the anger bubbling up again, mixing with fear and disbelief. "Why the hell didn't you tell me this sooner? Why let me find out like this?" "I didn't want to get you involved," Marcus said quickly. "But you have a right to know. She's your wife. You're the one who can do something about this. I couldn't protect her anymore. I thought she was just using me for a distraction, but it's more than that. She's trapped." The revelation hit me like a tidal wave, knocking the breath out of me. Emma was in danger. I didn't know how deep her involvement went, but it was clear now that this wasn't just about her affair. She was mixed up with criminals, with dangerous people who would stop at nothing to protect their operation. And I was caught in the middle of it all. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Marcus took a deep breath, his face serious. "You need to get ahead of this, Ryan. If Emma's in as deep as I think she is, the longer you wait, the worse it'll get. You need to figure out who you can trust, and you need to get her away from Thomas. If you don't, it's going to destroy everything. Her, you, the whole damn thing." I ran a hand over my face, trying to process it all. I can't just walk away from her, Marcus. I can't leave her in this mess. Then you need to start digging. You need to find out who Thomas really is, what he's capable of. You need to take control of the situation before it takes control of her. I stood there, staring at him, feeling the weight of his words sink in. This wasn't just about an affair. It wasn't just about Emma's addiction to the gym. This was about saving her. From herself. From Thomas. From a world I had no idea she was involved in. "Where do I start?" I asked, my voice steady now, my resolve building. Marcus gave me a hard look, then nodded toward the horizon. "I've already started, looking into it. I'll keep an eye on Thomas. But you need to be careful. This goes deeper than you think." The days that followed were a blur of tension and uncertainty. I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in around me. Every move I made seemed to be watched. Every word I spoke felt calculated, as if someone was waiting for me to slip up. I spent long hours researching Thomas, digging into his background, his business dealings, and any connection he might have had to the shady world Marcus had hinted at. It wasn't easy. Thomas had a clean reputation on the surface. He was well connected. In the local fitness scene, always seen as a hard-working, ambitious entrepreneur. But under that polished exterior, there was something off. His business interests spanned far beyond the gym, with investments in multiple companies, many of which were obscure and hard to trace. I couldn't help but feel the weight of it all. Emma was more involved in this world than I had ever realized. She'd kept her secrets so carefully hidden, woven into the fabric of our life, and now I was unraveling everything I thought I knew about her. How had it come to this? That night, after hours of digging through records, I found something that made my blood run cold. A list of offshore accounts, transactions with entities that had connections to organized crime, money laundering, drug trafficking, weapons deals. It was all there, buried in the details of Thomas's investments. The evidence was mounting, and it was clear. Emma was in deeper than I'd ever imagined. She wasn't just a pawn in Thomas's game. She was a willing participant, at least, to some degree. The question was, how far had she gone? How much had she been involved? I needed answers, and I needed them fast. I decided to confront her, but not the way I had before. This time, I had to be strategic. I couldn't just confront her and let her walk away or shut down. This was about survival. Hers and mine. I needed to know what she knew, how deep her involvement went, and whether I could trust her to help me bring Thomas down, or if I needed to walk away before things got worse. When I got home that night, Emma was sitting on the couch, her gym bag at her feet. She looked up at me with a mixture of exhaustion and wariness in her eyes. She knew something was coming. "Ryan," she said softly, her voice almost apologetic. "I've been thinking about everything we talked about. I know I've lied to you, but I don't know how to fix it." I sat down across from her, my gaze unwavering. "You're going to tell me everything, Emma. No more lies, no more hiding. If we're going to fix this, you need to tell me what's really going on. How involved are you with Thomas?" She flinched at the mention of his name, her eyes briefly flickering with fear. But she didn't look away. She knew I wasn't going to back down. She started, but her voice faltered, like she was trying to form the words but couldn't quite bring herself to speak them. "I never meant for it to get this far. At first it was just about the gym, about finding something that made me feel like I had control again. And then I started doing things for Thomas, things I didn't even understand at the time." I leaned forward. "Like what? What kind of things, Emma? What have you been doing for him?" Her breath caught in her throat, and for a moment, I thought she might break down entirely. But instead, she swallowed hard and began to speak, each word laced with guilt. He asked me to help him with some of his business dealings. At first, it was small things, running errands, handling accounts. But then he started asking me to do more. To use my position at the gym to help him launder money, to cover up transactions. And the deeper I got, the harder it was to say no. He made promises. He said that if I helped him, he'd make sure I was taken care of. And I thought I could control it. I thought I could balance it with everything else in my life. But I was wrong, Ryan. I was so wrong. I felt the anger flare inside me, but I held it back. This wasn't the time to lose control. How deep, Emma? How far did you go for him? Did you? I didn't know what I was getting into, she interrupted, her voice desperate. I swear to you, Ryan, I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was just helping him with small things, but it's bigger than I ever imagined. He's involved in dangerous stuff. And now, I don't know how to get out. I've tried to distance myself, but every time I do, he pulls me back in. And now, I don't know if I can leave without it costing me everything. I think he's threatening me. I stared at her, trying to make sense of the chaos swirling around us. Why didn't you come to me, Emma? Why didn't you tell me any of this before? I could have helped you. I was ashamed, she whispered, her eyes welling with tears. I was ashamed of what I had become. And I was scared that if I told you, you would leave me. I thought I could fix it on my own. But now I can see that I'm in over my head. I sat there, the weight of her words sinking in. The weight of the decision settled on me like a boulder. Taking the fight to Thomas would require more than just courage. It would require strategy, precision, and an understanding of the dangerous world I was now stepping into. Emma had her flaws, but she had also shown that she wanted out. Now, I had to decide whether I could trust her fully again, or if I was being led into an even deeper trap. As the days passed, we started to plan. Emma gave me what she knew, and together we mapped out a strategy. I couldn't trust anyone, especially not Thomas or the people around him. There were too many connections, too many possible threats lurking in the shadows. But Emma had made it clear that the deeper you went into this world, the harder it was to escape. And it wasn't just about the money anymore, it was about power. We decided the best way forward was to gather as much concrete evidence as possible. Emma agreed to reach out to a few trusted contacts in the gym industry, people who could provide intel on Thomas's dealings without raising suspicion. But we had to tread carefully. One wrong move, and it could all come crashing down. I wasn't just going after Thomas anymore. I was going after everything he stood for, his criminal empire, his illicit businesses, and the web of lies that had ensnared Emma and countless others. The first breakthrough came when Emma managed to get access to one of Thomas's meetings. He didn't think twice about her presence, distracted by his own plans. She overheard enough to confirm that Thomas wasn't just laundering money. He was involved in trafficking and, possibly, human smuggling. That night, we put our plan into motion. Armed with this new intel, I made a call to a former associate, someone I trusted in the world of law enforcement. Together, we set up a meeting, agreeing that we needed to go public with what we knew. If we could expose Thomas before he realized what was happening, we might have a chance at taking him down without getting ourselves caught in the crossfire. But things were never that simple. The morning of our meeting, Emma was gone. I came home to find the apartment empty, her gym bag. Still in the corner, her phone left charging on the counter. Panic gripped me as I realized what had happened. Thomas had found out. He knew what we were planning, and he wasn't going to let it happen. I immediately tried to reach her. Called her, texted her, but there was no response. Time was running out. I decided to go to the last place I thought she'd be, the gym. I knew it was a long shot, but I had to try. The place was eerily quiet when I arrived, the familiar hum of the elliptical machines and clinking weights replaced by an unsettling stillness. Then I saw him. Thomas stood near the back, talking to a few of his associates in low, murmured voices. I felt a surge of anger, but I couldn't act on it yet. Not until I knew where Emma was. I approached him slowly, my heart pounding. He looked up, a smile spreading across his face, but it was cold. "Ryan," he said with mock warmth, "you look like a man with a lot on his mind." "I want Emma back," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Where is she?" Thomas raised an eyebrow as if the question amused him. "Oh, she's fine. You needn't worry about her. She's just taking a little time to think. You know, you don't get to be a part of our little world and then walk away without consequences. It's a hard lesson to learn." The knot in my stomach tightened. I knew Thomas wasn't lying. He had Emma, and he wasn't about to let her go without a fight. "I'm done with your games, Thomas," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm done with everything. You don't scare me." "Oh, Ryan," he said, his smile widening. "You have no idea how deep you're in, do you? No idea what's at stake here. If you think you're getting out of this unscathed, you're sorely mistaken. You're already in too deep. Your wife? She's a part of something much bigger than you could ever understand. You're not just a pawn anymore. You're a target." It hit me then. He wasn't just playing a game. He was making sure that if I wanted to go up against him, it would cost me everything. The conversation ended abruptly, and I knew then that I had no choice. I couldn't just confront him directly and expect to walk away unscathed. But I had one advantage. Thomas underestimated me. He thought I was a man backed into a corner. He was wrong. I left the gym, but not without leaving something behind. An anonymous tip to the authorities, an email with the documents Emma had uncovered, along with enough evidence to send Thomas and his operation into chaos. The authorities had been alerted, and the net was slowly closing in on him, but Emma was still missing. I didn't know where she was or what Thomas had planned for her, but I wasn't going to stop until I found her. The game had changed. It wasn't just about saving my marriage anymore. It was about survival. As the hours passed, I found myself at a crossroads. The night was long and uncertain. I couldn't stop thinking about Emma, imagining all the worst-case scenarios. Thomas wouldn't hesitate to use her as leverage. He knew how much I cared, and he wasn't above hurting her to keep me in line. I couldn't afford to wait any longer. I spent the next few hours putting together a plan. I couldn't go to the police just yet. They needed more time to close in on Thomas, and he was clever. He could slip away if we weren't careful. Instead, I called in every favor I had, reaching out to old friends who owed me. I wasn't naive enough to believe I could take down Thomas alone. But with the right people on my side, we had a fighting chance. By the time the sun began to rise, I had a small army of trusted allies, former colleagues, private investigators, even some local contacts who owed me. They were all ready to move when the time came. We were going to find Emma. We were going to expose Thomas for everything he was. And most importantly, we were going to get her out of his grasp. The first step was to track down his inner circle, those closest to him, the ones who knew his plans. I couldn't go after Thomas directly just yet. He was too dangerous. But if I could get to his people, I might be able to learn where Emma was being held. I wasn't going to leave any stone unturned. I spent the day in a blur of phone calls, meetings, and covert surveillance. It wasn't until late afternoon that I caught my first break. One of Thomas's associates, a man named Luke, was spotted leaving a diner on the outskirts of town. He was a low-level guy, someone who worked for Thomas but wasn't as loyal as the others. He was known for being slippery, and I knew if anyone would break under pressure, it would be him. I followed him for miles, keeping my distance, blending into the shadows. Eventually, he led me to a nondescript warehouse on the edge of town. The building seemed ordinary, but I knew better. This was where Thomas did his dirty work, where his operations were run from behind closed doors, and if Emma was here, this would be where I would find her. I called in the team. It was time to move. We approached quietly, like ghosts in the night, ready for whatever came next. Luke hadn't noticed us, too focused on his phone as he entered the building. But we weren't there to catch him. We were there to save Emma. I led the charge, my heart racing in my chest. We made our way inside, moving with precision. The building was dark, filled with crates and boxes stacked high. But I knew we had little time. We had to find her fast. After what felt like an eternity of searching, I heard a faint sound, muffled but unmistakable. A cry for help. It was her. I broke into a run, following the sound. I found her in a small, dimly lit room, tied to a chair, her face pale but alive. Relief washed over me in an overwhelming wave, but it was quickly replaced by rage. Thomas had gone too far. I wasn't going to let him get away with this. "Emma," I whispered, kneeling beside her. "Are you okay?" She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and relief. "Ryan, I knew you'd come for me. I didn't know if I could survive this." I untied the ropes binding her wrists, my hands shaking with the realization of just how close we had come to losing everything. "We're getting out of here. Stay quiet, stay close." But as I helped her to her feet, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps. We weren't alone anymore. I pulled Emma behind me, instinctively shielding her. Out of the shadows stepped Thomas, flanked by two of his men. His eyes locked onto mine, and the smile on his face was cold, predatory. "You think you can take her from me?" Thomas sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "You think you're in control? This is my world, Ryan. You were never going to win, not against me." The words stung, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had nothing left to lose. "You're right about one thing," I said, my voice steady. "This is your world, but it's not mine, and I'm done playing by your rules." I turned to Emma. "Get to the exit, now! I'll handle this." Her eyes flickered with hesitation, but she nodded, slipping out of the room with a swift, silent grace. She was going to make it out. That was all that mattered now. The two men with Thomas took a step forward, but I was ready. I had no intention of backing down, not when everything had led to this moment. Thomas lunged, but I was faster. The fight was brutal, painful, but every punch I landed, every move I made, it was all for Emma. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore. I was fighting for our future. I was fighting for my life. The men with Thomas were no match for me. They went down quickly, and Thomas, realizing his plan was falling apart, took a step back. He was cornered. "You think this ends with you, Ryan?" Thomas spat, blood dripping from his lip. "You think you've won? You're not going to walk away from this unscathed. There's nowhere you can hide." The days that followed were a blur of legal battles, police interrogations, and a whirlwind of emotions. Thomas's arrest set off a chain reaction. His empire, once sprawling and seemingly invincible, began to fall apart piece by piece. The authorities were quick to gather evidence, and soon the full scope of his crimes, money laundering, human trafficking, and a litany of other illicit activities, became public knowledge. The news was everywhere. His gym, the one where Emma had spent so much of her time, was shut down. The clients, the people who had been involved, were all investigated. The spotlight was on Thomas, and the world saw him for what he truly was. But even with his empire crumbling, the aftermath wasn't easy. Emma and I were thrust into the chaos. I had to shield her from the media, from the prying eyes of those who wanted to turn our lives into a spectacle. But there were also the quieter, more insidious consequences. The whispers, the suspicions. Friends and family who wondered why she'd been involved in such a dangerous world. For months, it felt like we were living in a pressure cooker. Everyone watching, waiting for us to slip. And then there was the matter of my job. The moment I found out Thomas had been behind so much of my own work's recent turmoil, it was impossible to stay. The guilt and betrayal ran deep. I couldn't work for him any longer, and though it meant starting over, I knew it was time to leave that part of my life behind. Emma, for her part, struggled with her own guilt. The addiction, the lies, everything she'd done before felt like a shadow that still lingered over her. She started seeing a therapist, trying to untangle the mess she'd gotten herself into. But there were moments when the weight of it all would make her retreat into herself. She was terrified that I would leave her, that I wouldn't be able to forgive her for what she'd done. And sometimes, I wasn't sure if I could. But we had a choice. We could either keep falling into the same patterns, letting the past define us, or we could fight to move forward, together. Slowly, we began to rebuild, one piece at a time. The therapy sessions helped, talking through everything, the betrayal, the addiction, the affair. It wasn't easy, but it started to feel like we could make sense of it. In the silence of our home, there were no easy answers, but there was the possibility of healing. The thing about forgiveness is that it doesn't come all at once. It's like planting a seed. You have to water it, nurture it, give it time to grow. And maybe, just maybe, it might bloom into something new. As the months passed, things began to settle. Emma found a new job, one that didn't involve Thomas or the gym. She started to reclaim the parts of herself she had lost along the way. And I spent more time focusing on my own healing, reflecting on everything that had happened, and thinking about the kind of person I wanted to become. But we weren't done yet. A year later, Thomas's trial began. It was one of those moments that felt like it could change everything or destroy it all over again. Emma decided to testify, something I wasn't sure she could do. It was her moment to fully confront the man who had controlled so much of her life, the man who had almost destroyed everything. The trial was a public spectacle, with Thomas's lawyers throwing everything they could at her. The lies, the manipulation. It was all there. But Emma stood firm. She was stronger than I had ever seen her. The evidence we had gathered, combined with the testimonies of others who had been wronged by Thomas, painted a damning picture. His world of corruption came crashing down in a final, undeniable way. When the verdict came in, Thomas was sentenced to life in prison. But it didn't feel like a victory. Justice had been served, yes, but it was hard to feel that sense of triumph. In the end, it wasn't about winning or losing, it was about surviving. And we had survived. Emma and I didn't walk away unscathed, but we walked away together. The future wasn't certain, and there were still scars we would carry for the rest of our lives. But we had each other. In that, there was hope. Life didn't go back to the way it was before. It couldn't. But maybe, just maybe, we had a chance at something better, something real. And for the first time in a long time, I believed that we could make it, together.